Ever stop to think that maybe you don't know yourself as well as you think you do? Studies show that around 90% of the decisions we make every day are controlled by automatic processes in our minds, outside of our conscious control. That means a lot of the time you're on autopilot, acting without really knowing why. What if I told you there's a quantum leap you can take to change that forever? A mental state where you can access what your mind's been hiding and finally understand what truly drives you. Sounds impossible? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. But before we dive into this concept, we need to understand something fundamental. What exactly is hidden in your mind, and why can't you access it easily? Imagine your brain as a house with tons of rooms. Some are well lit, organized, and you visit them every day. Others, though, are locked up, dusty, and full of memories you'd rather ignore. These closed-off rooms hold powerful secrets, traumas, limiting beliefs, behavior patterns that shape your choices, emotions, and even your relationships. The problem is, as long as those doors stay locked, you're going to keep repeating the same mistakes and living the same frustrations. Now, here's a mind-blowing fact. Scientists have discovered that the human unconscious stores about 2 million bits of information per second, but only 1% of that is processed consciously. That means 99% of what's going on inside you is completely off your radar. So how can we access this vast internal database? The answer might be in something called quantum self-awareness, a technique that promises not only to open the doors to those hidden rooms, but also to transform them into powerful tools for creating the life you want. But here's the first surprise. We're not talking about conventional psychology or cheap self-help. This concept comes from groundbreaking studies that combine quantum physics, neuroscience, and Eastern philosophy. Yeah, quantum physics. You've heard about subatomic particles changing their behavior when they're observed, right? Well, it sounds crazy, but the same logic can be applied to your mind. When you start looking at what's hidden inside you, things start to change, and fast. What if I told you some people have achieved extraordinary results by exploring this technique? One woman, for example, overcame a childhood trauma in just a few weeks using these principles. Another man discovered that his chronic job dissatisfaction was caused by a deeply rooted belief from childhood that he didn't deserve success. When he accessed that belief and reprogrammed it, his professional life took an incredible turn. Sounds like magic? It's not. It's science. But here's another intriguing question. If this is so powerful, why isn't everyone using it? The truth is, a lot of people are afraid of what they might find when they open those hidden doors, afraid of facing their shadows, their vulnerabilities. But what they don't realize is that by avoiding this process, they're allowing those shadows to control their lives in invisible ways. And that leads us to an even bigger question. How do you start this journey without feeling overwhelmed or scared? Before I answer that, picture this. You enter a mental laboratory where every thought, emotion, and memory is like a scientific experiment. You test hypotheses, ask tough questions, and observe patterns you never noticed before. As you go deeper, you start to see profound connections between seemingly random events in your life. For example, that relationship that always ended badly, that opportunity you let slip away, that constant feeling of inadequacy. It all starts to make sense. It's like putting together a giant puzzle where each piece reveals a part of your true self. But hold on, there's a lot more to come. Before we continue, I want to make it clear that this journey isn't linear. It's full of twists, turns, and unexpected insights, and that's exactly what makes it so fascinating. Every step you take in this direction is like zooming in on a blurry photo. The more you look, the more details appear. Now, let's explore exactly how this quantum leap of self-awareness works. What are the practical tools you can use to start opening those hidden doors? For that, we need to better understand how the human brain processes information and how we can hack that system in a smart way. So if you're ready to unlock the mysteries of your own mind and take the first step towards real transformation, stick with me, because what's coming next will change everything you think you know about who you are. Let's start by understanding how the human brain really works when it comes to processing information and creating unconscious patterns. Imagine your brain is like a super-efficient supercomputer, but with one glitch. It prioritizes survival above everything else. Back in the day, when our ancestors were surrounded by predators and constant threats, our brains developed quick mechanisms for identifying dangers and making split-second decisions. Those mechanisms are still with us today, but in a completely different world. The problem is, those automatic reactions, designed to save us from physical danger, can now sabotage our emotional and mental lives. For example, ever felt that sense of panic when you're called on to speak in public, or that tightness in your chest when you receive constructive criticism? That's because your brain interprets those situations as threats to your social survival. Yep, social. Our brains evolved to value acceptance from the group because, in the past, being kicked out of the tribe meant certain death. So even though you rationally know there's no real danger, your nervous system goes into high alert. And here's the secret. Many of the limiting beliefs that control your life were formed exactly like that, as automatic responses to events your brain interpreted as threats. But what does this have to do with the quantum leap of self-awareness? Everything. Because to access what your mind is hiding, we first need to understand how those beliefs were created and how they continue to operate behind the scenes. Here's a shocking revelation. Every emotion you feel is like a fingerprint. It leaves invisible marks on your brain, called neurocircuits. When you repeat an emotion over and over, whether it's fear, anger, or sadness, those circuits get stronger, like well-worn trails in a forest. Over time, those trails become your brain's preferred routes, determining how you react to situations without even realizing it. And now, get ready for another surprise. You can reprogram those trails. That's right. Just like a computer can have its software updated, your brain can also be reconfigured. The key to this is something called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and change throughout life. But here's the big challenge. To reprogram your brain, you first need to identify the beliefs and patterns that are running in the background. And that's not easy, because many of them are buried deep in your unconscious. So how do you do it? One powerful technique involves using strategic questions. Questions are incredible tools because they direct your attention to specific areas of your mind. For example, try answering this. When was the first time you felt like you weren't good enough? Seems simple, right? But that question can trigger an avalanche of memories and insights. Suddenly, you start connecting dots that previously seemed disconnected. Maybe that feeling of inadequacy comes from an experience in childhood, like being compared to an older sibling or receiving excessive criticism from your parents. That discovery might be uncomfortable, but it's liberating. Now let's explore another fascinating concept, the role of repressed emotions. Often, when we face difficult situations, our tendency is to suppress negative emotions. We put the pain, anger, or frustration in a mental box and move on. But here's the problem. Those emotions don't disappear. They stay there, accumulating energy, until one day they explode unexpectedly. Ever notice how some people have disproportionate reactions to small problems? That's exactly what's happening. A repressed emotion has finally found an escape valve. The good news is, there's a way to release those emotions in a healthy way. A practice known as emotional release involves recognizing, feeling, and expressing those trapped emotions. This can be done through exercises like writing about your experiences, talking to someone you trust, or even screaming in a safe place. The important thing is to allow those emotions to flow, instead of keeping them trapped inside you. By doing that, you start to clear the mental space needed to access deeper parts of your unconscious. But here's a new, intriguing question. How do you know if you're really progressing on this journey? How do you measure the impact of these internal changes on your external life? The answer lies in observing repetitive patterns. If you keep facing the same problems, whether it's at work, in relationships, or with your health, that's a clear sign that there are still unresolved issues in your unconscious. However, as you move forward in the process of self-awareness, those patterns start to change. Toxic relationships dissolve. Opportunities arise where there were only closed doors before, and you start to feel a sense of alignment with who you truly are. But wait, there's still more. So far, we've talked about the brain, emotions, and limiting beliefs. But what if I told you there's an even deeper dimension to this journey? One that involves not just your mind, but also your connection to something bigger than yourself. That's the next stage of the quantum leap of self-awareness, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Get ready to explore the role of intuition, synchronicity, and other invisible forces that shape our reality. Because ultimately, true self-awareness isn't just about understanding your mind, but also about expanding your consciousness to embrace the unknown. Before we dive into this deeper dimension of self-awareness, let's think about something curious. Why is intuition so powerful, yet so often neglected? Imagine your mind as an iceberg. The visible part above the water represents the conscious mind, logical thoughts, rational decisions, and fact-based analysis. But below the surface is the unconscious, a hidden vastness where emotions, memories, and, yes, intuition reside. Intuition is like an internal compass that points to truths that your rational brain can't yet understand. And here's the fascinating detail. It doesn't work based on data or logic, but on invisible patterns perceived by your unconscious. But why does trusting intuition feel so difficult? It's because we live in a society that overvalues analytical thinking. From a young age, we're taught to question, to seek proof, and to distrust anything that can't be measured or explained. However, the truth is that many of humanity's greatest discoveries came not from pure logic, but from intuitive insights. Albert Einstein, for example, claimed that his revolutionary ideas came from mental images that he visualized before translating them into mathematical equations. Similarly, artists, scientists, and visionary leaders often report that their moments of greatest clarity come when they turn off logical thinking and surrender to intuition. And now, another surprising revelation. Intuition isn't just an individual phenomenon, it's also connected to something much bigger. In quantum physics, there's a concept called the unified field. A kind of invisible network that connects all things in the universe. Some researchers suggest that our intuition may be accessing information from this field, allowing us to grasp insights that transcend space and time. Sounds like science fiction? Maybe. But think about this. Has it ever happened that you thought of someone and seconds later that person called you? Or that you had a hunch about something and later found out you were right? These are examples of synchronicities, seemingly random events that have profound meanings and invisible connections. These coincidences aren't merely casual. They are clues left by the universe to guide us on our journey of self-discovery. When we start paying attention to these synchronicities, something incredible happens. Our reality begins to change. It's as if the universe is responding to our internal efforts, organizing external events to help us evolve. For example, imagine that you're trying to change careers but are afraid to take the first step. One day, you happen to find an article about someone who made exactly the transition you want. Then, during a casual conversation, a friend mentions a perfect opportunity for you. These events may seem random, but they are actually reflections of your internal state. As you align with your true essence, the world around you begins to reorganize to facilitate your progress. But here's an important challenge. How can we cultivate this connection with the invisible without falling into traps like superstition or illusion? The answer lies in the balance between intuition and discernment. Intuition is a powerful tool, but it needs to be tempered with practical wisdom. This means listening to your inner voice, but also critically evaluating the messages it brings. An effective way to do this is to practice silent observation. Set aside a few minutes each day to simply stop, breathe, and listen to what your mind and body are trying to say. Over time, you'll develop a sharper sensitivity to distinguish between true impulses and momentary distractions. Okay, here's the translated text, optimized for a US English-speaking YouTube audience. Now let's get back to the concept of the quantum leap in self-awareness. We've talked about exploring your subconscious and tapping into your intuition, and the next step is integrating those discoveries into your daily life. And here's the big challenge. How do you turn deep insights into concrete actions? A lot of people fall into the trap of accumulating knowledge, but never actually applying it. They read books, watch videos, and attend workshops, but they're still stuck in the same old patterns. The key to avoiding this is to take a practical, incremental approach. Start small. Pick one specific area of your life, whether it's health, relationships, or career, and identify a pattern you want to change. Then experiment with new behaviors, even if they're tiny, and see what happens. And here's another surprise. Sometimes, the biggest obstacle to personal growth isn't fear or a lack of resources, but resistance to discomfort. Real change requires you to step outside your comfort zone, facing situations that might seem scary or uncertain. For example, imagine you decide to break a bad habit, like procrastinating. In the first few days, you might feel anxious or frustrated because your brain is used to the old pattern. But with persistence, that initial discomfort gives way to a new, healthier, and more productive routine. What if I told you there are specific tools that can speed up this process? One of them is practicing gratitude. Yes, something as simple as being thankful can have a huge impact on your personal transformation. Research shows that people who cultivate gratitude regularly tend to be happier, more resilient, and more creative. That's because gratitude shifts your focus away from limitations and towards possibilities. It activates areas of your brain associated with well-being and reduces cortisol levels, the stress hormone. Plus, gratitude amplifies your connection to the present, allowing you to see opportunities and solutions you might have missed before. But of course, none of this is linear. The journey of self-discovery is full of ups and downs, moments of clarity followed by periods of confusion. And you know what makes it even more intriguing? The fact that the further you go, the more questions arise. It's like opening a door and finding another one behind it. Every answer leads to new questions. Every discovery reveals new mysteries. And that's not frustrating. It's exciting. Because ultimately, the real goal of this journey isn't to reach a final destination, but to continuously expand your awareness, embracing the unknown with curiosity and courage. But we still have one more crucial chapter to explore, the role of community and human connections in this process. Because while self-awareness is an individual journey, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. We're social beings by nature, and our interactions with others play a key role in our evolution. So how can we use these connections to accelerate our growth and create a positive impact on the world around us? Let's find out together. Now, let's explore one of the most fascinating and yet least understood aspects of self-awareness: the role of human connections in our inner journey. Imagine your life as a web. Every person you interact with, whether it's a close friend, a coworker, or even a stranger, is a strand in that web. When something happens to one of those strands, the whole structure vibrates. That means your relationships aren't just external events. They directly reflect and influence your inner world. But here's the intriguing detail. Often, the relationships that challenge us the most deeply are the ones that contribute the most to our growth. For example, think about someone who's hurt you in the past. Maybe it was an overbearing boss, a friend who betrayed you, or even a family member you have a hard time connecting with. These people might seem like obstacles in your life, but they're actually acting as mirrors. They reflect parts of yourself that still need to be healed or understood. Here's a powerful revelation. The people who irritate or frustrate us the most often carry qualities that we deny in ourselves. It might be a characteristic we secretly admire but are afraid to express, or something we reject because we believe it's wrong. By recognizing this, you start to transform those difficult relationships into learning opportunities. But how do you do this in a practical way? A powerful technique is the practice of conscious empathy. Instead of automatically reacting to anger or frustration we feel towards others, we can pause and ask ourselves, what is this person showing me about myself? For example, if you're bothered by someone's arrogance, it might be because you also have a hard time accepting your own moments of overconfidence. If someone seems overly critical, maybe that's reflecting your own internal self-critic. By doing this exercise, you not only gain clarity about yourself, but you also create space for healthier and more meaningful relationships. And here's another surprise. Our human connections aren't just individual reflections, they're also portals to something bigger. There are theories in psychology and philosophy that suggest we're all connected by a collective field of consciousness, similar to the concept of the collective unconscious proposed by Carl Jung. This field would be a kind of universal mind where shared experiences, archetypes, and patterns reside. When we connect deeply with other people, whether through love, collaboration, or even conflict, we're tapping into this collective field, and that can greatly amplify our capacity for personal growth. Now, let's think about something even broader: the impact that your journey of self-awareness can have on the world around you. Often we focus so much on our internal transformations that we forget we're part of something bigger. But the truth is, when you change, the world around you changes too. Remember the web metaphor. When you adjust one strand, the whole structure responds. That means every step you take towards self-awareness creates ripples that positively affect the people around you. A leader who works on their internal insecurities becomes more empathetic and inspiring. A parent who heals their emotional wounds creates a safer and more loving environment for their children. A friend who faces their own fears becomes a source of support for others. And here's the key point. The quantum leap in self-awareness isn't just about improving your individual life, it's about expanding your influence in the world. When you connect with your true essence, you become a catalyst for positive change. You start to act not just from the ego, with its needs and fears, but from a place of purpose and service. And that doesn't have to be grandiose. Sometimes the biggest impacts come from small gestures, listening to someone attentively, offering help without expecting anything in return, or simply being a calm presence in the midst of chaos. But of course, this raises an important question. How do you balance caring for others and caring for yourself? It's easy to fall into the trap of putting other people's needs above your own, especially when you start to realize the impact your actions have on the world. However, true power comes from balance. You can't fill other people's cups if your own is empty. So while you're dedicated to helping and inspiring the people around you, remember to keep investing in your own journey of growth. That includes setting aside time for practices like meditation, reflection, and self-care. And now we've reached the final moment of this journey, but not in a conclusive way, because, as I said before, self-awareness isn't a destination, but an ongoing process. The question I leave you with is this: what will you do with everything you've discovered today? How will you use these tools, insights, and strategies to take the next step in your personal evolution? Remember that every choice you make, no matter how small it seems, has the potential to create meaningful change. both within you and in the world around you. Before we wrap up, I want to extend an invitation. If you enjoyed this exploration of the quantum leap in self-awareness, keep watching our videos. In the next one, we'll dive into another fascinating topic, the secrets of the millionaire mind, how to reprogram your mindset for success. It'll be just as surprising as this journey, filled with revelations and practical strategies to transform your relationship with money, success, and personal fulfillment. So, if you want to continue expanding your awareness and creating the life you've always dreamed of, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as the next video is released. And don't forget to leave your comment below. What stood out to you the most in this video? What are your biggest questions or challenges when it comes to self-awareness? I'm eager to hear your stories and continue this conversation with you. Until then, remember, your mind is an infinite universe, full of possibilities that are yet to be explored. What it hides might be exactly what you need to take the next big leap. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.